This is my true story. I fed my son every single day for years. I worked hard so he could eat, sleep, and dream without fear. I gave him everything: love, warmth, a roof, and my trust. I thought he would protect me when I became weak. But I was wrong. One night, I found his secret diary under his bed, and what I read inside made my hands shake so badly that I could barely breathe. My own blood had planned my death. Before I tell you what I did next, tell me where you're watching from. And please subscribe so my story can reach others. I fed my son every single day for years, morning, afternoon, and night. I made sure his plate was never empty. When he was small, I would wake before sunrise just to cook his favorite meal. Even when I had no money left for myself, I made sure he ate well. I worked long hours, my back sore, my hands rough, but it never mattered. Watching him eat with a smile made all the pain worth it. I thought love was simple. You give it, and it comes back to you. I believed that giving him everything would build his heart with kindness. When he was a boy, he used to hug me tight and say he would take care of me when I grew old. I believed those words. I built my whole life around them. I saved every bit I earned so he would never struggle the way I did. I bought him new clothes, shoes, and books. I paid his school fees on time, even when it meant skipping meals. I fixed his bike, helped him with homework, and stayed up at night when he was sick. Every part of me existed for him. As he grew older, I noticed small changes. He stopped smiling when I came home. He started eating in silence, his eyes on his phone, his voice dry when he spoke. I thought it was just youth, just distance. Every parent feels it, I told myself. So I gave him space, but I still kept cooking for him, cleaning after him, keeping the light on in his room when he stayed out late. My world still revolved around his comfort. Sometimes I would wake in the middle of the night, hear him talking on the phone, and wonder who he was becoming. His tone had changed, sharp, impatient, full of anger I didn't understand. But I ignored it. Parents see signs, but love blinds them. I told myself he was just stressed, that the world was hard on young people. I didn't want to believe he could ever turn dark inside. There were days I came home from work exhausted, rain-soaked, and hungry. He would be sitting at the table, scrolling on his phone, and I would still go straight to the stove to cook for him. I would place his bowl in front of him, and he would eat without a word. No thank you, no smile, just silence. But even then, I thought, it's okay. He's tired, he's busy. He'll understand one day. When I looked at him, I saw the baby I once held, the child who once laughed when I lifted him in my arms. I didn't see the man he was becoming, cold, distant, and full of something I couldn't name. I never thought to look deeper. I never thought that inside his mind, he was writing something so cruel that it would freeze my soul. I fed him through my pain. When I was sick, I still got up and made sure he had food. When I ran out of money, I borrowed from friends so he would not go hungry. I sold my watch once to buy his medicine. I smiled when I handed him my last bit of cash. Every parent thinks sacrifice is love. But sometimes, sacrifice becomes blindness. I remember one evening in particular. He came home late, smelling of smoke and perfume. I had waited for him with dinner, the soup still warm. He looked at it, frowned, and walked to his room without a word. I sat there, staring at his untouched bowl, the steam fading into the cold air. That night, I felt something strange, a quiet ache, like the beginning of a truth I wasn't ready to face. Still, I didn't stop. The next morning, I made his breakfast again. The cycle continued. Food, silence, work, worry. Every act of care became a routine I couldn't break. I told myself love would fix everything. I told myself he would come back to me one day, softer, kinder, grateful. But I didn't know what he was writing behind closed doors. I didn't know that while I was feeding him love, he was feeding hate. It happened on a quiet night. The kind of night when nothing feels wrong, but the air is heavy with something you can't explain. I had gone into his room to clean, just like I always did. He had gone out with his friends, leaving his things scattered across the floor. His shoes were under the bed, his jacket on the chair, and his school bag half open. I picked up his clothes, folded them, and set them aside. I wasn't searching for anything. I was just being a father. But sometimes, fate doesn't ask. It just shows you what you're meant to see. As I reached to move his bag, something small slipped out from underneath it. A black notebook, thin, with its corner torn. I picked it up, thinking it was one of his school journals. My name was written on the cover in small letters. Just one word, Dad. At first I smiled. I thought it was something kind, something personal. Maybe he had written about his childhood or about the times we spent together. I sat on his bed, turned on the lamp, and opened it. The first few pages were empty. Then came the words, written in blue ink, rough, angry. My eyes ran over them slowly, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. I hate my dad, it said. The handwriting was his. I blinked, thinking maybe I was reading wrong. But then the next line cut deeper. He's old, weak, useless. I wish he would just disappear. My hands froze on the page. My breath caught. I turned another page. Each line was worse than the last. He thinks he's helping me, but he's the reason I'm stuck. He still acts like I'm a kid. I can't stand his face anymore. I kept reading, each word burning into my chest. Then came a line that made me feel cold all over. One day I'll throw him in the river. Let him drown, then the money will be mine. I stopped. My heart began to pound so hard that I could hear it. I tried to breathe, but the air felt thick, heavy. I stared at the words, the letters he had written with his own hand, and felt my whole body go numb. I flipped to the next page, and there it was again. 3 days from now. When he goes for his walk by the river. That will be the day. There was even a small drawing of the bridge, the exact place I went to every morning for fresh air. He had written the time, he had planned everything. I felt my fingers tremble so badly that I dropped the diary on the bed. It landed face open, showing another line written below. $2 million. All mine soon. My body felt weak. My eyes filled with water, but I couldn't cry. It wasn't sadness. It was shock. A kind of horror I didn't know the heart could hold. I picked up the diary again, flipping through the pages like a man searching for mercy in a story that had none. Every page was filled with anger, hate, and greed. He had written about me as if I was a stranger, someone standing in his way. I sat there for what felt like hours, just staring at those pages. The lamp flickered beside me. The whole room felt smaller. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. The same hands that had fed him, held him, raised him, now trembling because of him. I thought about every meal I had cooked, every coin I had saved, every word of love I had spoken. All of it led to this moment, sitting on his bed, reading my own death planned by the boy I once carried on my shoulders. The clock ticked softly in the corner, reminding me that the date he wrote was only 3 days away. When I finally stood up, my knees felt weak. I placed the diary back exactly where I found it and walked out of the room quietly. I didn't turn on any lights. I didn't look back. My reflection in the hallway mirror looked pale, older, smaller. My heart was beating fast, but my mind was already starting to think. Not with fear, but with something colder. That night, I sat by the window until sunrise. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the darkness and whispered to myself, "My son wants me gone." And from that moment, I knew what I had to do. The more I read, the colder I felt. The diary did not only say he hated me, it showed he had thought about my end like a shopping list. He had written about money, about when he would get it, about how easy it would be once I was gone. The pages were steady and cruel. Each line was written with a calm hand. There were no sudden scribbles, no angry crossings out. It read like a map that led straight to my grave. My hands shook not only from fear, but from the chill of a truth I never imagined. The boy who once needed me had planned my end as if he were writing a grocery note. He had named places I knew well. He had marked days that matched my slow walks. He had written of keeping quiet, of waiting for the right time, of watching me like a hunter watches his prey. He had thought about witnesses and luck, about silence, and how quickly the world could move on when one man fell out of it. The words were small, but they carried a weight that pressed into my chest. I could almost hear his steps on the floor, smell the same soap he used, see the tilt of his head as if he was looking at me now. The page went on, each sentence stripping another layer from the father I had been and the man I was left trying to be. There was a list of names in the diary. Some were friends I had never met, some were places he liked to go. He wrote about borrowed time, about how certain people would not notice if one more life disappeared from the street. He wrote about money he thought would come to him once I was gone. He had counted coins I had never shown him. He had boasted in lines that read small but hit hard. It was not only the plan, it was the confidence behind it. He had given himself permission to steal a life in his head. He had rehearsed it until it felt normal. I read instructions of a sort, but not clear steps. He wrote as if he had practiced being kind and cold at the same time. He had written of smiles that hid intent. He had written of the right faces to wear in front of others. The diary taught me how he thought, not how to stop him. The book was a mirror of his mind. It showed that in his world, a father could be a barrier to success. It showed how easy it had become for him to set aside the truth we once shared. The words were small, but they left no doubt. He meant to do what he wrote. My mind moved fast then, though my body felt slow. I thought of all the mornings I rose and fixed his bowl. I thought of the nights I sat awake, listening to his breath, thinking he was safe. He had planned to end those mornings, to stop those sounds forever. The horror settled in my bones. It was not fear for the moment only. It was fear of what another day might bring if I did not act. I had to think with a clear head, but my head still felt heavy like a stone. I closed the diary for a while and held it on my lap. The room was quiet. The clock on the wall ticked, and the sound felt loud. I could not sleep that night. I did not eat either. My hands kept finding the book again, as if I needed to prove to myself the words were real. Each time I opened it, the same lines stared back. He had written the same sentence more than once. He had written his wish like a prayer. That repeated phrase had the effect of making the plan more real. His handwriting didn't tremble. His resolve did not shake. That was the part that hurt the most. I thought about telling someone. I thought about shouting to the street, about knocking on neighbors' doors. But part of me wanted to hide. Secrets look different when they are in a child's hand. Shame wraps itself into the lines and becomes something that sits heavy in the room. I worried about bringing shame on the house and on names that would not deserve it. I knew also that acting in panic could make things worse. The diary gave me time, even if the time was frightening. It asked me to choose. My choice became clear not in a flash, but in the silence after midnight. I would not match his cold with a cold of my own that only hurt me. I would not be loud. I would not give him any scene to use later. I would use the small power I had left. I would protect my life the way I had protected his when he was a child. I would use the law, the bank papers, the truth written in his own hand to stop him. The diary told me where, but it also gave me what I needed: the reason to act. I set the book back under the bed where I had found it, but I did not hide it. I left it where it might be found again if needed. I sat up until dawn, thinking through quiet moves. I thought of people who would listen to a calm voice, of documents that proved what I had read, of ways to make sure my wallet and my life would not vanish. My hands still shook, but the shaking had a new direction. It was no longer only horror. It was the first step toward a plan that would keep me safe without giving him the satisfaction of violence. The diary had frozen my heart, but it had also shown me a way forward that would not become a crime. I did not run to the street. I did not scream. I put the diary back where I found it and closed the door gently. My hands still shook, but my face was calm. I knew the boy who had written those lines. I also knew the man he could become if no one stopped him. Panic helps no one. Panic makes mistakes. I had too many years of work and too little time to waste on loud mistakes. So I chose quiet. First, I made a list. It was small and plain: names, places, dates, the bridge he had marked, the time he planned to wait, the amount he wanted. I wrote each thing on a new line. My handwriting moved slowly, steady. Each line helped me think. The diary gave me the map. My list would be the way to close the roads on that map. I took the diary with me. I did not hide it. I took it to the room where I kept my papers and put it on top of the other folders. I opened the drawer and pulled out old bank statements, pension slips, and the small papers I had kept for years. When you live a long life, you keep small things. Those things look useless until you need them. I spread the papers on the table and began to check them against the dates in the diary. Each match made my hands less shaky. Proof is steady. Proof builds courage. Next, I thought of people. I could not do this alone. I had a neighbor who was steady and had known me for years. I had a younger man from the church who always helped older folks with forms. Most of all, I had a small lawyer I had used once to fix a house problem. He was quiet and slow, the kind of man who did not show off. I decided to call him. I did not call at once. I waited until night, when no one would hear my voice loud and worry. Then I rang the number and left one clear sentence on his phone. Please come. I need help. That was all. No story, no cry. The quiet call met a quiet man. While I waited, I copied pages. I did not take photos with a phone. I used a small scanner at the library. The machine made a soft sound. The pages slid through. I had copies of the lines that scared me. Copies are like seeds. You can plant them where they will grow into truth. I put a copy into an envelope and marked it with the dates I feared. I left another copy with the small lawyer when he came. He read the words slowly, his eyes moving like a man tracing a map. He did not say much. He did not need to. He understood. We spoke in short phrases, plain words. He made a list of steps. First, protect my life. Then, secure my money. Then, alert the right people quietly. We agreed not to tell my son anything yet. He would act if needed. He would not frighten my son into anger. That would not help. Calm action is safer than loud anger. We changed passwords on bank accounts that day. I had put most of my money in my name alone. But some papers showed transfers and shared accounts that my son could get to if he tried. The lawyer helped me move some funds to a safe place. He suggested an account in my stepson's name. The stepson had always cared for me. He came by to check that I was well without knowing every reason. I trusted him with the keys I had left. Trust is a small thing that keeps a life running. I would not trust a man who wrote my death plan with money. We also called a police friend quietly, not to accuse at once, but to let a man listen. He said he would put an extra patrol near the bridge on the day in the diary. He would not make a show of it. He would keep an eye. I did not want my son to be humiliated in public. I wanted him stopped. I wanted to live. The law moves slow, but it moves just. I had learned that over a long life. That night I packed a small bag. I did not run away. I prepared in case I needed to leave fast. A coat, some medicine, a few papers, the copies of the diary in a secure envelope. Small things. I put the bag near the door and placed the diary in a place where I could reach it without searching for it. Preparation is not fear. It is respect for the life you still hold. I sat up until dawn making plans again. I thought of the river and the bridge and how many times I had walked there thinking only of the air and the water. It would be strange to stand there and watch for danger. Strange, but possible. I had walked many strange roads. I would walk this one too if it kept me breathing. By morning, the shaking in my hands had slowed. Proof and plan had cooled the terror into purpose. The diary had shown a cold map of harm. My quiet moves had begun to redraw that map. I would not fight with anger or noise. I would use the slow, steady means that keep the weak safe. I had fed him for years. Now I would feed myself with careful action and small steps toward safety. I did not scream. I did not run. I walked slowly to the small office where the lawyer kept his papers. The street was the same one I had walked for years, but my steps felt steady now. I had sat up all night. I had thought and planned in the quiet. Fear was there, but it was joined by a sharp, cold calm. I needed help that was smart, not loud. I needed law and order, not anger and chaos. The lawyer was an old man, too. He knew faces and names in our town. He listened without surprise. He read the lines I brought him and kept his face plain. He asked me simple questions. Where did I keep my papers? When had I last used my bank card? Who else had keys to my house? I answered clearly. I told him the date my son had marked. He wrote notes and did not move fast or slow. There was a rhythm of work in his office. That rhythm made me feel safer. We made a plan that followed rules. First, secure the money so no one could take it. The lawyer said we must act in the bank with proper forms. He explained the law in plain words I could understand. He said he would help me change names on accounts and move money in a legal way. He said we would use what the diary showed as proof if we had to. He did not promise quick magic. He promised steady work and correct papers. Second, protect my body. He called a friend in the local station and asked for quiet help. A police officer would watch the river the day my son had written about. The office agreed to keep a low guard. They said they would not make a big scene. They would be there like a shadow. The lawyer and the officer both said the same thing. We will stop harm before it starts. That phrase felt like a hand on my shoulder. Third, move the money to a safe place. I did not want to hide it or run. I wanted it with someone who would care for it and not use it to hurt me. The lawyer suggested a trusted name. My stepson had been kind for years. He visited on Sundays. He fixed the roof and brought soup when I was sick. He had been quiet and true. I chose him because love should live where it is returned, not where it is wasted. We went to the bank together. The clerk knew the lawyer. The forms were many. I signed in calm, careful strokes. I moved some funds into a new account with the stepson as manager. The money was still mine in truth, but it was held where a kind hand could reach it. The bank gave me papers, receipts, and a folder. The lawyer kept copies in his desk. Everything was done in daylight with names and stamps. It felt right. It felt like a lock on a door. We also changed passwords and card numbers, small things that protect small lives. I cut old cards and burned them in the stove. The smoke rose and I watched the old plastic curl and blacken. It was a small act, but it felt like I was taking back what belonged to me. The lawyer made sure the bank had notices to flag any sudden attempts to move money. Paperwork is slow, but it is steady. It stops quick crimes before they can run. The police friend came by that night to ask plain questions. He did not shout. He asked date, time, place. He wrote what I said and thanked me for telling him. He said he would watch, that a plain patrol car would be near the bridge the day my son had chosen. He said it would look ordinary, like a road check. We agreed to keep things small so my son would not become frantic. I told no one else in the house. Secrets can ruin more than lies. I kept the diary where I found it. The lawyer kept a copy. The officer kept a note. I felt like a man building a fence, one post at a time. Each post was a step of law, not anger. Each nail was proof, not revenge. I slept better those nights because I had friends who kept to the book, not to noise. My hands still shook sometimes. Old fear holds on like cold. But the shaking lessened with each paper signed and each small act of care. I ate simple meals. I walked short paths. I called the stepson and told him a plain thing. Please watch things for me. He did not ask why. He just came and did small chores. He did not need answers to do what is right. When the day came, I walked near the river, but not on the bridge. I walked where someone could see me. I met the officer with a small nod. He was there, like he said, calm and ready. I watched the water and breathed slow. My son did not appear. He had plans, but plans need chance. Chance had no power that morning. The safe choice was not bright. It did not feel like victory. It felt like a long work finished. I had protected my life with law and truth. I had not punished with violence. I had not made a scene that could make things worse. I had used slow, honest steps to close the door on harm. The diary had made my hands shake in horror. The quiet, steady moves I chose made them stop shaking, little by little. I fed him once. Now I fed my life with careful choices and the help of good people. After everything was arranged, the next step was the money. The one thing my son wanted most. the same thing that had poisoned his heart. I sat with the lawyer that morning and looked at the papers that held the story of my life's work. Every dollar in those accounts had come from years of struggle, long shifts, wet shoes, late nights, aching bones. It wasn't just money, it was time, it was sacrifice, it was proof that I had lived for something. Now, that same money had become the reason my son wanted me dead. But he didn't know that before he could take it, I had already taken it away from him. The lawyer explained every detail again, calm, steady, professional. He said the transfer was legal, signed, and witnessed. The documents were clear. The full balance, all $2 million, would move into my stepson's name as the sole beneficiary. My stepson didn't even know yet. I would tell him later, quietly, when I was far away. I wanted no noise, no drama, no room for guilt or second thoughts. I had made my choice. Love would protect what hate tried to steal. At the bank, the clerk looked at me with surprise. She had seen me so many times over the years, always depositing, always saving, always speaking kindly about my boy. This time, I said nothing more than I needed to. I handed her the documents, she verified them, and one by one, the signatures were stamped and sealed. The lawyer nodded, satisfied. I watched the teller type something on her computer. My heart beat slow, calm, steady. And then she said, "It's done, sir." I felt nothing for a moment. No relief, no sadness, just quiet. Like standing in an empty room after a storm has passed. My son's name was gone from the account forever. I had made sure of it. The inheritance he dreamed of was now in hands that wouldn't betray me. My stepson had earned it, not through blood, but through kindness. That day, I learned that family is not about who is born from you. It's about who would never hurt you, even if they could. The lawyer handed me the final folder with copies of all documents. "Keep this safe," he said. I nodded and tucked it under my arm. We walked out together, down the same street I had walked with my son when he was little. Back then, I carried him on my shoulders, pointing at birds and clouds. Now I carried the proof that I had survived his plan. Life had a way of closing circles, sometimes painfully, but perfectly. When I reached home, I sat in the chair by the window and placed the folder beside me. The diary still lay in the drawer, untouched since that night. I took it out again and looked at it, then at the folder. One was filled with hate, the other with protection. One had tried to end my story, the other had saved it. I smiled faintly. The law had replaced the lie. That evening my stepson came by. He didn't know what I had done. He just brought dinner, as he often did. He asked if I was okay. I nodded, told him I was tired. He didn't ask questions. He never did. He sat with me for a while, talking about small things. The weather, the shop, the garden. I watched him and felt something deep inside me soften. This was the kind of son a man hopes to have. Not perfect, not rich, but loyal, humble, steady. Later, after he left, I sat alone and thought about what would happen when my real son found out. He would rage, he would shout, he would accuse. But the truth would be silent and unbreakable. The documents were real, the transfer complete, the money gone from his reach forever. He couldn't undo it, couldn't steal it, couldn't fake love to earn it back. I went to bed that night with a strange feeling. Not happiness, not victory, but peace. For the first time in years, I felt like I had done something right for myself. I had fed him love, and he returned hate. But I had turned that hate into justice without raising my voice. The money he wanted became the wall between us, a wall built by truth and sealed by law. He would learn soon enough that greed can starve a man faster than hunger ever could. The day he wrote in his diary finally came. It was marked clearly. The same day, the same time, the same place he had planned to push me into the river. For 3 nights before it, I barely slept. My heart beat slow but heavy, not out of fear, but out of preparation. I had read that line too many times. 3 days later, by the river. It played in my head like a quiet drum. But I wasn't the same man he had written about anymore. I was ready. I was guarded. And I was not alone. The morning came gray and still. The sky looked like wet metal. The river near the edge of town ran cold and fast that season. Every day before, I had gone there for my walk at the same time. That routine was what he had counted on. But that morning, I didn't walk there. I sat in my house, calm, with my bag packed. I had already spoken to the lawyer and the officer. The police car was parked 2 streets away, waiting in silence. They would watch him, not me. At the hour written in the diary, I knew he would go. My son had always been punctual. He believed in plans, not people. Somewhere near that river, he was waiting for me to appear. I imagined him standing by the bridge, hands in his pockets, pretending to scroll on his phone while his mind turned dark thoughts over and over. He wouldn't see me. He would only see the empty road and the slow water. Then the police would step out quietly, just as we arranged. I didn't see it happen, but I heard about it later. The officer told me how they had approached him, calm and professional, no shouting, no force. They asked for his name. They showed him the diary, the copies of his writing, the proof he couldn't deny. At first, he tried to laugh. He said it was all a joke. But the words on those pages weren't funny anymore. The officers asked about the date, the location, the plan. They told him that I was safe and that they knew everything. He stopped laughing. His face went pale, his mouth opened, but no words came out. When the officer told me this part, I sat still. I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just nodded. It was strange to imagine your own child standing there, caught by the very plan he had written. But I felt no joy in his fall. It wasn't victory. It was survival. Sometimes, truth doesn't win. It just keeps you alive. Later that evening, I walked to the window and looked toward the road that led to the river. The air outside was quiet. The same quiet that used to comfort me now felt empty. I thought of all the times I had walked that way, with a calm mind, with love in my heart, never thinking my own blood would plan to end me there. I thought of him as a child, holding my hand, pointing at the water, asking about the fish. The memory stung. The same place he had laughed as a boy had become the place he planned to kill as a man. When the officers brought him home to collect his things, I didn't come out. I watched through the window as he stood by the gate, head low, eyes empty. He didn't look angry anymore. He looked broken. He tried to see me through the glass, but I stepped back into the shadows. The man he wanted to push into the river was still standing, silent, breathing, alive. And he was no longer part of that story. That night, the house was quiet. The ticking clock sounded louder than ever. I sat by the table and touched the edge of the diary again. It was over. The plan had failed. The man I had raised was gone, and what remained of him was a lesson I would never forget. I whispered to myself before going to bed. He wanted to drown me for money. Now he's drowning in his own guilt. And for the first time in weeks, I slept without fear. The days that followed felt strange. The house was quiet, but it wasn't peaceful. Silence after betrayal feels different. It doesn't heal you, it only reminds you that something is missing. I woke up early as I always did, made tea and sat by the window. The light from the morning sun came through the curtains, but it felt colder now. I had survived my son's plan, but a part of me had still died. The part that believed blood meant loyalty. The police came again, not to question me, but to finalize reports. They were kind and spoke softly. They told me my son was under watch, but not in jail yet. He had broken no law that could be proven beyond words. The diary was evidence of intent, not action. They said they had warned him. They said he cried when they read his own words back to him. He told them he didn't mean it. He told them it was just anger, that it was only a fantasy, not a plan. But I had seen the details, the time, the place. It was no fantasy. It was a murder rehearsed on paper. Word spread faster than I wanted it to. Small towns don't keep secrets. Neighbors who once waved now whispered. Some said I had made it up. Some said I had gone mad. Others pitied me. But pity feels heavy when you've already buried your trust. People stopped calling my son by his name. They started calling him the one who wrote the diary. Every time I walked through the market, I could hear their voices in the distance, low, curious, sharp. I didn't answer. I just bought what I needed and left. I wasn't ashamed. I was just tired. My son stopped coming home. He moved to a friend's place across town. The same friend whose name was written in the diary's early pages, the one he mentioned as the one who knows the plan. Maybe he went there because it was the only place left that would take him in. I didn't go looking for him. I had spent years chasing his happiness. Now it was time to protect my own safety. He lost his job a week later. His employer heard about the investigation. They said they didn't want trouble. They let him go quietly. He tried to get another job, but no one hired him. People don't forget things like this. He began selling his old things online, his watch, his bike, even the phone I had bought him. Each item he sold felt like a piece of his old life disappearing. One night, I got a letter. It was from him. The handwriting was shaky and uneven, as if written by a different person. It said he was sorry, that he didn't know what he was thinking, that he didn't mean to hurt me. But I had read his real words, written in anger, clear and sharp. This letter felt like something written for forgiveness, not truth. I read it once, folded it neatly, and placed it inside the same drawer that held the diary. 2 stories written by the same man. One with hate, one with regret. I didn't reply. Some silences are heavier than words. People in town stopped asking about me. They moved on to new gossip, new faces, new stories. But every time they saw my son, they remembered. He walked with his head down, shoulders bent. The pride that once filled his steps had turned into shame. I saw him once from across the street. Our eyes met for a second. He didn't wave. He just looked, as if seeing a ghost of the man he had tried to erase. I turned and walked away. That moment said more than any words could. The lawyer came by later to check on me. He said everything was still safe. The transfer was solid, my stepson was managing well, and the case was considered closed. I thanked him quietly. He asked if I felt justice had been done. I told him, justice doesn't always look like punishment. Sometimes it looks like peace. He nodded. That night I sat by the window again. The air outside was calm. I realized that survival has a cost. You keep your body alive, but your heart carries scars that never heal. Still, I had no regrets. I had chosen silence over shouting, calm over chaos, truth over blood. He had written the day he would end my life, but in the end, he destroyed his own. One line at a time. I knew it was time to leave. The house no longer felt like home. Every room carried a ghost of what had happened. The chair where I read the diary, the window where I watched him being questioned, the table where I once placed his meals. Each corner whispered something I didn't want to hear. I couldn't keep living among memories that had turned to wounds. So I made my decision in silence. I would disappear, not out of fear, but to begin again somewhere no one knew my name, somewhere my story didn't follow me. I packed slowly, taking only what I needed. Some clothes, the folder from the lawyer, the small envelope with my documents, and a single photo. Him as a child, smiling in a park, holding a piece of bread in his hand. That was the boy I had loved, not the man who wrote that diary. I didn't hate him. I didn't even wish him harm. I just couldn't stay near him anymore. Love doesn't survive in the same place where trust has been buried. Before leaving, I went to see my stepson. He was the only person I wanted to tell. When I arrived, he was fixing the fence in front of his house. He looked surprised to see me, but he smiled the same calm smile he always had. I told him I was going away for some time, maybe for good. He didn't ask why. He simply nodded and said, "If you need anything, call me." I handed him a sealed envelope with all the documents, the bank transfers, the lawyer's papers, everything he would need to handle what I was leaving behind. He didn't open it. He just placed it inside his jacket and said, "I'll keep it safe." That night, I took one last walk through town. The streets were quiet, lights glowing faintly through windows, dogs barking in the distance. Every shop, every corner, every smell. It all felt familiar, yet far away. I had lived my whole life here. I had worked, sacrificed, built, and fed my family here. But sometimes, even the place you built with your own hands turns cold when hearts around you do. I reached the edge of town where the road split into two, one leading back to my house, the other to the bus station. I didn't look back. I chose the road that led me away. At the station, I bought a ticket to the first city the next morning flight could take me. It didn't matter where. Distance was all I needed. I sat on a bench and waited through the night, the suitcase beside me, my hands folded on my lap. Around dawn, I felt a strange calm. Not happiness, not sadness, just the stillness that comes when a storm has finally ended. When the plane took off, I looked out the window. The clouds below looked soft, endless. The world seemed big again, full of places where pain couldn't find me. I thought of my son, probably waking up that morning, realizing the house was empty, the rooms quiet, and the air colder than before. He might have walked through each room, calling my name, but hearing nothing. He would find no note, no address, no way to follow. Only the emptiness of what he had destroyed. I landed in a small coastal town, warm, simple, quiet. I rented a small apartment overlooking the water. The days passed slowly there. The sea spoke softly through the window at night. I began to cook for myself again, not for anyone else. The first time I sat at the table with my own bowl of soup, I smiled faintly. It had been years since I had cooked without waiting for someone to eat before me. The food tasted different. Not better, just freer. Sometimes I would walk to the shore and watch the sun sink into the horizon. The waves would roll in and out, steady and endless, like forgiveness that never ends but never forgets. I knew I would never go back. The man who once begged for love was gone. The man who survived his own blood now lived for quiet mornings and slow evenings. In the end, I didn't vanish to hide. I vanished to live. And somewhere far away, my son would finally understand what true emptiness feels like. Not losing money, not losing power, but losing the one person who would have forgiven him. I wake each morning to the sound of the sea. The waves hit the rocks below my window with slow rhythm, and the air smells clean, like salt and wind. I sit by the window with my cup of tea, watch the sky turn from gray to gold, and breathe in the quiet I worked all my life to earn. There are no phones ringing, no footsteps in the hallway, no voice calling me Dad. At first, that silence hurt more than the betrayal. But now it feels like peace. A peace that came at a cost I will never forget. Sometimes I still think about him. Not the man who wrote the diary, the boy he used to be. The child who laughed when I carried him on my shoulders. The one who cried when he fell and held my hand tight at night when storms hit the roof. I see flashes of him in my mind. His small shoes by the door, his drawings on the wall, his smile when I brought him his favorite soup. Then the memory fades, replaced by the image of that same hand writing my death plan in a notebook. I wonder what happened to him, not where he is, but who he became inside. I don't hate him. Hate would mean I still carry him with me. I simply released him from my life. Love turned to pain, and pain turned to silence. That silence is what I live in now, not bitter, not broken, just done. There are wounds that stop bleeding, but never close. I learned that forgiveness isn't about saying, "It's fine." Forgiveness is when you stop letting what happened control your heartbeat. I forgave him the day I left, not to free him, but to free myself. In this new town, no one knows my story. They just know me as the quiet old man who walks near the water every evening and nods to the shopkeepers. I grow small flowers on my balcony. I read books. I sleep well. People might think it's a simple life, but to me, it's everything. Because peace is a luxury that only those who've lived through storms can truly understand. I often think about the way everything ended. He lost everything: his job, his name, his respect. People who once laughed with him now avoid him. The same friends who listened to his hate now whisper behind his back. Money was all he wanted, and yet it became the reason he lost everything else. I didn't take revenge. I just stepped away and let life do its work. The truth has a strange way of balancing things when you stop trying to force it. Sometimes I imagine him standing by the river again, not waiting for me, but for forgiveness that will never come. Maybe he thinks of me. Maybe he regrets what he wrote. Maybe he doesn't. It doesn't matter anymore. The river still flows, the bridge still stands, but the story that began there has ended. I lived. He learned. That's enough. One evening, I sat on the shore watching the sunset. The sky looked like fire melting into the sea. A young man walked by with his father, laughing, carrying a small bag of food, the same way my son once did with me. I watched them for a while. There was no bitterness in me, only a quiet ache. Some fathers are blessed twice, once with love, once with peace. I only got the second, and that's enough. I took a pen and wrote a final note in my notebook. It wasn't for him. It wasn't for anyone. It was for myself. A line that closed the story I had carried for too long. I fed him every day. He fed his heart with greed. I found his plan, and I found my freedom. I lost a son, but I found peace. I folded that note and kept it inside the drawer beside my bed. Maybe one day, when I am gone, someone will find it. They won't know my name. They won't know his. But they'll know one thing, that even after betrayal, a man can rebuild himself quietly, with dignity. And when I leave this world, I want no stone, no name, no story told. Just the sound of the sea, the calm of the wind, and the memory of a father who chose peace over revenge. Final thought. I fed him love, and he fed me betrayal. But in the end, I lived, and that was enough.